What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I'm your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Rattler. What's poppin' with you?
What up, bro? It's cold outside. And in the midst of, let me tell you something. In the midst of the crawfish ball that was the summer in New Orleans, I never ever thought we would get to a point where it would be cold outside, but it feels wonderful outside. Not so much in Birmingham, but we'll get into that. How's everything on your side?
Everything is blessed, bro. Shout out your Aces 2-0.
You see them. Asia
cooking.
Wilson she is taking a diamond tester to the Breonna Stewart MVP, and it is buzzing. It is definitely buzzing. So, bro, that first quarter of basketball from the Las Vegas Aces is something that if you are a basketball purist, just go watch it. That is how you show up to a finals game with a lot on the line and play like it. Shout out to Becky Hammond, had him in a zone. I mean, it just was beautiful. So, one more win and Asia gets that ring. I'm happy for him. I'm hoping for a long series. Again, I love the Aces, but the Liberty are the other super team. So I want to see a good series. But man, the Aces just look like it's a lot. And Candace Parker is not even playing. So it's wild. It's wild. But shout out to the Aces, man.
Their all-star team on 2K. The team by itself. Yes. But before we get into this Pelicans defeat, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, on X, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO Basketball, no E. Like the episode below. Subscribe to New Orleans Basketball. So the Pelicans played basketball, and it did not go well. They lost. That's a good point. They lost 120-87 in Birmingham. In a night where Kyra Lewis and Herb Jones and Jemison make their return to their home state where they're from. And really, the Pelicans just got outworked, man. Like from the beginning, we talked about it in some of our pods during the summer. I expected Ime Udoka to have this team looking different than previous Rockets teams. Like they were feisty. They were in the passing lanes. They were making things disruptive and difficult. Like, say what you want about Dylan Brooks, but he was giving BI trouble. He was giving Zion trouble. Like, he was doing the things. I don't know if he necessarily should be making that much money to do, but he was doing the things that he did in Memphis, right? And the things that caused him to be a pester. And you can see that trickle down into the rest of the roster. Jay Shante, you see it in some of those young players. This is how we need to play in order for us to win. And you saw that even in a preseason game where, there's no stakes on the line. You just saw the mentality and the effort that they're willing for. Now, that's also been a calling card for the Pelicans. Like, Zion has not been available. BI has not been available. So the way the Pelicans were able to stay in games and stay competitive was they outworked teams and they out-defended teams and they were the scrappier teams and they were the hungry team. And again, I understand that this is a preseason game, but you don't want games like this to fester as you lead into the regular season. You already got some bodies down in terms of injuries. You want to not necessarily play in your best ball game one comes, but the mentality of who you want to be and how you're going to play night in and night out, whether your shot is falling or not, that's something you should have established as you kind of start the season. So what did you see from this game and kind of take away?
It was a low vibrational game. I think that's the best way. It just seemed like everybody, the entire team, maybe say for like Dyson and like Najee because he's always on 100. It just seemed like everybody was like disassociated with the game or like disinterested in the game. I mean, Zion took 4 shots the whole game. I mean, that is not conducive to whether we're playing preseason, pickup ball, 2K, whatever you want to call it. Zion taking 3 shots and just not looking into the game was a worrisome sign. And it like you said, it went through everybody, right? It was the whole team. And listen, when you come out of the game, when you come out of the gate in the first half and you have 20 turnovers, that you talk about, wanting to, in the preseason, wanting to establish trends, wanting to establish routines. You see it, like you said, with the Rockets. Ime Udoka, although it's a preseason game, has guys defending, has guys playing hard. And again, that's a team with a whole bunch of draft picks that are like all been drafted together, and now they're being tied together by book-in veterans. When you talk about Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. But these guys are all like around the same age and all locked in and got things to prove. We talk about Cam Whitmore and Jabari Smith, and they seem to be a team that was like, we know this is the preseason, but we have to use these games as building blocks to get to the regular season. And the Pelicans didn't treat last night like that. And so it just was an odd game to watch from tip off. It just looked like everybody was kind of like over it before the game even started. And it showed on the floor.
Right. And we're going to get into the turnovers because that was discouraging to say the least. But yeah, man, like the ball movement we talked about after game one, that was gone. Like there was no energy. There was no pace. Everybody looked sloppy. Like, I don't know if they went out the night before them and got lit in Birmingham, but it was not, it just was not what you're used to seeing.
The riveting Birmingham nightlife.
I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good. But let's talk about some of the themes that we've seen through 2 games now. David Griffin said it. You said it at the last one. Like, CJ looks the most in shape of anyone on the roster, and I think there's like a significant gap. And for one of the older players on the, I say old and I'm older than CJ, but like for one of the older players on the roster, like this has to bode well for him, right? Like, because it's not necessarily what you're available to do in the first half of the season or whatnot, but just starting in a place that you're not usually starting in. And not only that, but the adaptation that CJ's been asked to do now that Zion and Brandon Ingram are happening to play, like it's got to be encouraging from a veteran. Again, you talk about setting the tone and what you want to be for the season, and CJ has embodied, hey, follow my lead, even though he had the turnovers and things like that as well. Just his activity and his energy was consistent throughout 2 games. Another thing that kind of pointed that kind of stuck out to me was you saw similar rotations. CJ and Zion kind of paired together, BI and JV, or CJ and JV kind of paired together as well. I'm interested to see that development as the preseason and the season kicks off. Obviously, Trey gets thrown back into that, but what are your thoughts on that kind of being the alphabet soup of the duos in terms of Willie Green's rotation management?
Yeah, CJ has looked, really good the last 2 games. I mean, obviously, last night the turnovers, everybody had the turnover bug.
Yeah, so it was everybody.
Yeah, I don't want to harp too much. We'll talk about him, but outside of that, like he looked really good. His shot looked good. He looked confident, and again, he looks in shape. And listen, when you have offensive weapons like Zion and Brandon Ingram and CJ and JV, you have to be able to keep guys fresh and on the floor, and find the right pairings. And I think, when you have Jordan Hawkins and Trey Murphy and guys who can shoot, right? Who guys that have shown that they can shoot. You want to surround 2 of those guys with those shooters at all times. And I think when you saw last night, when you saw the pairings, and I'm sure you're going to see them moving forward, I think that goes to show, the flexibility of the offensive roster. Now, if you're going to turn the ball over, it's all from you. But with these guys, with the level of play that they can get to, right? We've seen CJ have 30-point, 20-point quarters, 30-point nights. We've seen JV have 30-point nights. And of course, we know what Brandon Ingram and Zion should do. You should never, ever have offensive laws through the game, right? And even if you do run into them, like, you should be able to say, hey, okay, well, let's sit that guy down and put another 20-point per game scorer in, including Trey Murphy when he gets back. And so, I think it's interesting to see. Now, there were some comments that Willie Green made afterwards, after the game, that we're going to get into, that is a little perturbing, a little disturbing.
Alarming.
A lot alarming. But I think, as far as just like the talent, there is offensive talent there, but there has to be a system involved where you are getting these guys into positions to score well. So I think the parents are fine, right? Either way it goes, like all four of those guys, the alphabet boys, I think all of them know how to play ball and put the ball in the hoop. It's just about finding the guys around them to put it on the floor and to make them successful.
Sure. So the other thing that you noticed is you saw again an extended look at Zion at the 5. Now, there were some good and some bad. There's obviously going to be advantages on the offensive end. Like there are 0 people probably in this world that can guard Zion one-on-one, much less a 7-footer who doesn't have the athleticism that he has. But on the other end, this is where if the Pelicans are going to deploy this throughout the regular season, it has to be better. And it starts with Zion himself. When he goes in at the 5, he has to have the mentality that I'm the 5. There were several times where there was a rebound or a missed shot, and Zion's the 5, and he's nowhere near the basket trying to get the rebound, right? Like, I understand sometimes Zion's playing the 1, like in terms of initiating the offense. But when you are the biggest guy on the court, like you have to play that way. And in terms of rim protection, again, there'll be times where he was nowhere near the rim. So if you're going to play small ball like that, you have to adapt your mentality based off the lineup that you're in. And again, Zion hasn't played very much 5 in his career. And so that's going to be a learning lesson, which Zion is an extremely smart individual. And I think that that's something he will grow into. His basketball IQ is through the charts. But those are some of the things that like clearly jump out to me when he goes out to the 5, that nobody's rebounding, nobody's near the rim. And that's something that has to change. So you brought up what Willie Green said after the game. And in passing, you may say, okay, this is not that big of a deal. This is a preseason. People are still making their installs. But in theory, you're like, hold on. So Willie Green said, he was asked, Zion only got 1 shot in the first half. What was going on with that? And Willie Green said something of the notion of we've yet to put in the Zion half-court packages. Well, I get it. There's been 2 preseason games, and Willie Green hasn't had very much Zion. He's had, 29 games of Zion in 2 years? But if you told me that Joe Mazzulla was creating the Celtics offense and he had not put in any half-court offense for Jason Tatum, things would be alarming a little bit.
Yes, it would.
To be damned. Let's say that you think Brandon Ingram is the best player on this team. I'm not going to argue against you one way or the other. Let's say you go to Dallas and Jason Kidd is like, we've yet to put in a half-court offense for Kyrie Irving as the second option. You would be alarmed. And so I understand you're just getting your feet underneath you. But the Pelicans have been playing basketball and working together for some time now. CJ keeps talking about it. Like, they've been playing for months, trying to walk into the season in shape. Is it alarming to you that Zion, this polarizing figure that nobody's yet to figure out because you haven't seen enough of him, especially Willie Green, is going into things similar to last year in which it was BI focused to start the year until BI went down and you were forced to play through Zion and CJ? Do you think like the primary option should be point Zion or point BI? Because at this point in this preseason, it's a little disturbing that like you're not playing through your best player.
Yeah, those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it, and it is very, very see and to hear, right? It's one thing to see it, right? Like we all watched Zion take 1 shot in the first half and get his first touch with 7 minutes to go in the first quarter. We saw it. We all watched it. It's another thing for the coach to come out and say, oh, yeah, the reason you guys saw what you saw was that we don't have any offense set in for Zion. Now, I will say that there is something to say about not showing your cards or not whatever, right? There's something to say about that in the preseason. Okay, so let's say Willie Green was doing a little gamesmanship.
Sure.
The issue is that you can see it from the players, right? You can see Zion get a bit frustrated when he's walking to the sideline after not touching the ball for however long. And I've seen coaches, NBA coaches, that have said, okay, we're running our sets for the best player. And they don't run the sets. The players don't run the sets. And there's a timeout and there's a shellacking on the sideline, right? A tongue lashing. I also want to put a little bit of the onus on Zion as well, because you are Zion Williamson. You are the max contract player. Demand the ball. I remember a story Shaq told a while ago where he said he came down and like 2 possessions, they didn't pass him the ball when he running back on defense told the point guard that it was either Fish or whoever was like, if you don't give me the goddamn ball, it's going to be like me and you on the sideline. And I think like Zion has to like demand the ball. He has to do some of that. Now, to get into the Brandon Ingram centric offense, I think what we're seeing is an overcorrection of what Brandon Ingram went through during FIBA and also what he said during the time. You remember Brandon Ingram came out and vocalized his issue with not having the ball in FIBA and being asked to do something else. And so, and to do another role. And so if Brandon Ingram has said, I don't like to be off the ball and I don't like to just stand around and ask for the ball, then again, it goes back to what I said last podcast. Zion can do things without Brandon Ingram on the floor. If Brandon Ingram has the ball, Zion can do things. He can be your gravitational pull in the dunker spot. He can set screens. He can move off the ball. Well, if Zion has the ball, we've seen what Brandon Ingram does without the ball. It's not great right now, right? It wasn't great. And so I think it's a little bit of like, well, let's make sure Brandon Ingram is happy because Zion can do whatever he can do without the ball. But Brandon Ingram's off the ball game is not great right now. And so I think you're seeing a little bit of that. You saw going into last season, Brandon Ingram was the focus of the offense. And yesterday, it seemed like Brandon Ingram had the ball way, way more than even the first game. And so, listen, Brandon Ingram has playmaking chops. We've seen it. He can do it. But there has to be a focus for Zion. The reason why Zion is because he is a matchup nightmare. And the only way to take advantage of that is to give him the ball and allow him to function, to dictate the defense and function as this is what the defense is going to do. I'm going to keep, it's Marshawn Lynch. I'm going to keep running at him up face over and over and over and over and over again until you make a decision to change it. Once you make a decision to change it, we saw Zion Williamson first game be able to dump the ball off, make plays in the short roll, hit shooters in the corner after you get him rolling a little bit. And so, it's definitely going to take some time for this team to gel and get. We knew this coming into the preseason, but I don't think it is inexcusable. If it is true that they haven't installed any Zion Williamson packages, that is inexcusable.
I tend to agree. I think that again, the 2 best playmakers on this team are both Brandon Ingram and Zion. But it should be Zion and Brandon Ingram, to your point. Like
yes.
You everything you just illustrated is absolutely correct. But Zion's a different animal. Like even JV talks about it. You have to bring all 5 guys to stop him on every given possession. Like this is what happened to be start last season. They were throwing it to Zion in the post a whole bunch, which Zion is historically efficient in as well. But as soon as he catches in the post, you give the defense so much time to create a 2, 3 man, 4 man wall. So when he turns around, he has to make a pass immediate. Versus, I think what we've seen, again, it's been a very small sample size. I think what we've seen Zion at his best is when he has the ball as the point forward. Like that's when he's able to get everybody else involved because of his vision, because of his passing ability. And not only that, for a guy who's missed so much time, if that's the best version of Zion, you should be practicing that in the preseason. Like he should be having the ball, making mistakes, learning how to take care of the ball as the point guard, as the primary facilitator here and there so that he can get comfortable in that role. If you start out with the post player over and over and over, how is he ever going to get comfortable maintaining the ball in the 2-minute stretches where BI sits down and things like that? So again, it's the second preseason game. Willie Green hasn't had a whole lot of time of working with a healthy Zion. So eventually you would think you would get to this point, but it needs to happen sooner than later. So we talk about the turnovers, and it's a mix of two things. First off, Zion and BI have to value the ball as point forwards. Like normally you have guards who have excellent handles as your point forwards, or as your point guards. But you also see around the league that like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like basically all these predatory wings also handle the ball a lot and also can have games with a lot of turnovers. But when they have the most effective game is when they value the ball. And for Zion and Brandon Ingram, who haven't been historical facilitators, like on-ball facilitators, that's something that, again, in the preseason, they need to work out. And I expect them to get better. I expect their handle to get tighter as they get in the rhythm of the game. But the other part that's glaring, Garrick, in terms of this turnover is we've gone too many seasons where the passing on this team is so inconsistent from player to player. Like even Zion and BI have moments where you're like, where the hell was that ball going? Like, there are so many moments, whether it's Najee or CJ, like the passing has just been terrible. And I joked about it last pod. Like, who is the Fred Vinson for passing on this team? Because it has to improve. You can't go into games and seasons and people can't throw simple alley-oops. Like you're seeing a Houston team that's very young and they play very out of control at times, but they're executing great passes consistently throughout the game because they're NBA players. And I feel like the Pelicans are missing in this area to some degree. What are your thoughts on like just the overall passing as a team and how it's just been below average for the past couple of years?
So the Pelicans finished the game with 25 turnovers, which is a miracle because they had 20 at half. So the second half was really good. They only had 5 turnovers the second half. So I don't know why or what it is that Willie Green did at halftime to kind of get them to understand about valuing the ball, but that needs to be said like pregame because that first half was terrible. And we've talked about this constantly for as long as this podcast has been live. We've talked about the entry passes in general, alley-oops. It just seems as though, and again, you know, I was tweeting about, you know, the game and people were talking about, hey, the Pelicans need a point guard. Well, the issue is that your 5 best players, none of them are point guards, none of them. And so if you do go get a point guard, if you do, let's say, for instance, you go find up this magical elixir who is out there and you go get a point guard, then how is that person going to, who is coming out of the starting lineup? And again, we know that CJ is not coming out of the starting lineup right now at this point. So it's not him. And so you're either taking Herb or JV out the starting lineup because Brandon Ingram is Zion. These guys have to get better at passing. It's not look outside to fix it. These guys on the team have to get better at passing. And you would think that passing, like you learn passing, you go outside and pass the ball with your dad when you're a child or your mom when you're a child or whoever, your friends. And so you would think that it's like a fundamental thing. What I think, there's a couple of guys on the team like Najee who are looking for the home run pass every time, right? Sometimes the best play is the simple play, right? There was a play. Dylan Brooks had a wide open layup, had a guy trailing him. I think it was Jordan Hawkins, and very simply left the ball behind him for a Jabari Smith dunk. And you put that in comparison with Najee, who was coming down the floor, and there was a guy cutting to the rim, and I don't know it might have been Zion. It was somebody. I can't remember who it was. Cutting down, all you have to do is 2-hand chest pass to the cutting guy. And Najee threw this, looked like NBA Street off the rim. And it's just make the simple pass. And there are some guys who just the simple pass is just very difficult for them. Brandon Ingram trying to get entry passes, or CJ trying to get entry passes to Zion is like, it is as difficult to get entry pass to Zion as it is trying to find the Pelicans game online yesterday. It was just as difficult it seemed like. And so these guys just have to get better at passing. They have to value the ball. You have to understand that when you give the ball away as much as the Pelicans do, not only are you giving the opponent a chance to get into transition, score easy baskets, but you're also taking possessions away from your team. That's how Zion ends up with 3 shots, 1 shot in the first half, because you had 20 turnovers. He had no opportunities to shoot the ball. That's how you end up down 15 points going into half or 10 points going into half, because you keep turning the ball over and giving the opportunity, the opponent field goal attempts while you're taking yours away. And these guys just have to get better. And you can see that you can do it because you had 5 turnovers the second half. So it's possible for you to be better at passing the ball and handling the ball, but these guys just have to get better, because Magic Johnson is not walking through the door. Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, none of those guys are walking through the door. You have who you have on the team, and those guys just have to get better.
You're absolutely right. The simple pass, that's just where the flashy pass, the circle, all that stuff, you don't need that. Like, just the simple pass. So we talk about the simple things. Defensive rebounding and rebounding were the things, the calling card for the Pelicans last season. That's what kept them in the race and got them into the play-in. And it was atrocious yesterday. It wasn't great the first game either. Again, I think a lot of that has to do with conditioning, because you're so focused on scoring that you don't really do it. Well, they didn't even score in this game, but you don't even work on it on the other end. But the other thing is, like, the Pelicans can't afford to get out rebounded. You have Zion and JV during the season on any game. Like, you should never get out rebounded by 12 rebounds when those guys are playing a full slew of minutes. And so again, it's not necessarily this game or the stats from this game, but more so that cannot be a theme. They did a great job of it last game, this game, not so much. You can't do that every other game. It's got to be a consistent thing, because this team is not going to equalize you from the 3-point line. Even though they're getting more up and more quality shots up, they're never going to be the Golden State Warriors. And so the way you combat that, hey, we're not killing you from the 3-point line, but we're going to beat you up in the paint. We're going to get offensive rebounds. We're going to get defensive rebounds, and we're going to score a high clip at the rim. You can't drop one of those areas and then expect to compete with the team that can light you up from 3 as well. So that's something to pay attention as the preseason, as the season comes around. So let's talk about a couple folks from the starting lineup. Who stood out to you? Again, it was sloppy all around. But who are some folks from the starting lineup that you thought carried over performance or uplifted the performance from the game 1 in the preseason?
Like I said, CJ played well. I think CJ is when he talks about the longest summer and not wanting to feel that way and coming into the season locked up, he is showing it on where, again, the turnovers are the turnovers. But outside of that, he looks like a guy that is locked in, a guy that has kind of he hasn't fully bought into the catch and shoot role, but you can see him working in the catch and shoot more and more and less of the in the bag CJ. Now he does pull the in the bag CJ out every so often, and it works, right? It looks like, you need that, right? You need that. Brandon Ingram and Zion can't be the only shot creators on the team. You do have to have other people doing it. CJ is well equipped to do it. I think it's just how often he goes to it and the usage of that skill set that he has. But I think he showed some really good things on tape yesterday. And I'm hoping that it ports over to the regular season, because CJ as the third, pseudo fourth, with Trey is out there, whatever you want to do. I think his confidence and his ability to maintain this level of play and maintain this level of play in a particular role is going to be super important for the Pelicans. Again, he looks great. He looks super in shape. Whatever he's done this offseason, it looks like it is working. And so I want to see it continue. I want to see him continue to kind of flourish, as understanding that he is a third and sometimes fourth option on the team. So I think he looked really good last night.
I agree. I think he looks healthy, and he's been very concise with his dribbling, very picking his spots. And again, for a veteran who's been around, and CJ says it himself, I can adapt my game. And you see it, and he's setting that example for everybody else who's going to have to adapt their game as the season goes along. The person that stands out to me is very obvious, Herb Jones. He's letting it fly with no hesitation, and it looks good. Like, it's not one of those knuckleball. Like, it looks like, oh, that should be going in. If Herb's able to do that, the Pelicans are going to be a problem. Because if you have to put your worst defender on Herb or just not guard him at all, and he's able to shoot in with confidence, like it's not like the hesitation, now I'm going to shoot it. Like he's letting it fly like he's Jordan Hawkins. And like that's, if he's able to do that and hit it at a consistent clip, not 40%, but better than 34, like I think that takes the Pelicans to a different level because that makes them so difficult to guard. The other person that stood out to me, not necessarily for stats or anything like that, is that I do think there's elements of JV's game that he's improved on. I saw a lot of passes out the post where a lot of times last year, again, there was no Zion. And so the other gravitational pull when Brandon Ingram was in the court was JV. And so there'd be 2 or 3 guys that would double JV, and he would just like either get a turnover or just hold the ball until the defense was able to reset and react. In this game, I saw him making quick passes. There was one he hit Zion on a cut. There was one he hit Kyra on a cut. And that's the type of things that you're going to have from JV. Again, there aren't very many big centers in this NBA. And so people are going to bring the double to JV too. And if everyone is constantly playing in James Borrego's offense and moving when they don't have the ball and creating lanes and passing lanes for easy, simple passes, I think that benefits a player like JV.
Yeah, just to kind of to give some credence also to that point. JV had talked about it in the offseason about wanting to be a floor spacer for Zion. He looks like he is completely bought into it. He is standing at the 3-point line and doing that. And there was a play, we talk about his feet and we talk about, how slow, but there was a play last night, where there was a drive into the lane and it was a kick out to Alperen Sengun. JV soft close with his hand up, didn't get out of position, soft close, ran Sengun off the 3-point line, stayed with him, hand straight up, and ended up being a turnover. Those are the type of plays. I don't expect JV to be great defensively. I don't expect him to do that type of thing but when you are called on, every once in a while, you're gonna have to make that play, close out to the 3-point line to the shooter, in control, with your hands up, run them off the 3-point line, and then also be ready to take the contact when they drive, hand straight up, and stonewall that driver. That is the type of things that you need from JV. He's not a rim protector, but if you can not be a negative every single play, then I think that is the best that you can ask for JV.
Yeah. So let's talk about the second line now. So again, a lot of run, a lot of good things. Who was someone that you felt, again, obviously we'll talk about Dyson, but like who was someone that you felt kind of made known that, hey, I'm fighting to get in this rotation too?
I think I like Jordan Hawkins. I do. And the thing that I like about Jordan Hawkins, and I was talking to somebody outside of this, that he looks like a basketball player. Like he looks like an NBA player. He's constantly running. And the thing that I like about him is that he knows who he is. Self-awareness, I always talk about, is my favorite trait of a person, of a human being. He is always hunting the 3-point line. And I think as time goes on and as he gets more reps with the starters and when games start to matter, and hopefully he does get on the floor, but I think having your stars know where one guy is going to be every time you drive and you get caught up in something, you know where Jordan Hawkins is. You might not know where anybody else is on the floor, but you know where Jordan Hawkins is. He is somewhere behind the 3-point line. Look at that arc around the 3-point line, and Jordan Hawkins will be there. And I love that about him, because what that does is it shows the defense that I don't care if I'm missing. I don't care if I'm making. Like, I'm hunting this 3-point line, and you cannot leave me open. And we saw yesterday there was a really good stretch where Jordan Hawkins was like lights out. Like he was running behind the 3-point line, relocating, not standing still. And I think that constant movement is something that the Pelicans have been missing, for a long, long time. And so he went 3 for 6 from the 3-point line. Please take more 3-pointers, because that is what you need him to do. You need to have Jordan Hawkins. He seems to already has this. He needs to have that cornerback mentality where I don't give a damn if this is a miss or you completed this pass. I'm still here. Like, I'm still shooting. This is my job to be on the floor to shoot. We talked about a couple of times against Orlando where he would pass up a shot and put the ball on the ground, and it seems like every time he did it, it was a travel. That is not what you like. You want to see that with him. You want to see that develop. But right now, for this team to compete right now, he was drafted to be a shooter. And it looks like, his confidence is starting to grow in himself. He is not gun shy. He is letting it loose. But as the shots go in, I think he's starting to get more confidence that the shots will fall. And that's going to bode well for the Pels moving forward.
Sure. And the thing with him, again, and we're going to highlight this over and over again, is he got attacked on defense, and people are just bodying him a little bit because he's undersized. But the thing I like about Jordan Hawkins, like you mentioned, is it doesn't faze him. Like, there were times in Trey's rookie year where he was just getting bodied, and you could see the confidence kind of like drain from Trey at times. Whereas Jordan Hawkins is the same thing, and the next time now he's going for chase down blocks. So like that, it's a different mentality there. Like with Trey, you kind of had to rev him up that like, Trey, every time you touch the ball, probably shoot it, bro. And with Jordan Hawkins, you don't have that problem. And so I have confidence that he may not have a lot of minutes to start the season, but eventually I think that guy is going to work his way into the rotation. So Kyra Lewis, again, you saw the trade. Obviously, he's back home in Alabama, wanted to put on a show for his friends and families. There should be more Kyra right now. There are too many times where Kyra comes off the pick and roll, and I'm like, zoom, zoom, like, go to the basket, Kyra. And, like, he just kind of waits to see what's developing. Whereas, when you see with De'Aaron Seabrook, like, if he has an open lane, like, he's going to the goal. Kyra has that type of speed. Like, I don't know if he watches De'Aaron Fox film or De'Aaron Fox game, but that's how Kyra should play. If he has a little bit of a blocking zone like Alvin Kamara, he should be going to the lane and forcing the issue. There was a couple times throughout the game where he did it, and I'm like, and he had nice touch around the rim. I'm like, Kyra, every time. Do that every time. And again, not a whole lot of experience for Kyra. Coming off the injury in his second year, maybe that confidence not yet. You see a couple go in, and maybe that starts to turn on. But again, if Kyra can develop that, hey, I'm faster than everybody else on the court, they're either going to have to foul me or I am going to score. If he develops that makes his push. That's his, hey, I should be fighting for rotation minutes too. But the player we got to talk about, which again we'll be in the show with 2 games in a row, is Dyson Daniels. The shot, again, you can tell it's a new shot because it just like every release just looks a little bit different, but he was shooting it confidently. And that's what you care about. Like we talked about with Lonzo when he came out the Fred Vincent factory, he only shot threes. Like this man would refuse to shoot anything but threes. And that's what you're seeing from Dyson, not necessarily the reluctance to shoot anything else, but the confidence that I've worked on this shot. This shot is going to go in, and not the thinking about it when I'm wide open. He also was a more aggressive attacking the rim. Dyson, you are 6'8". You're one of the best athletes on the court. At any point in time, you should be forcing the issue offensively. And so tell me what you see from Dyson. He looks more confident. He's directing traffic on offense, kind of developing into a point guard.
Yeah, I was super impressed with Dyson. And you know, the shooting aside, 3 for 4 from 3 is your Fred Vincent tax dollars at work. And that is some good investment being made because, I mean, I don't expect him to go 3 for 4 every game. No. But if you're open, take the shot, make the shot. And I like the confidence that he has in his shot. The one thing that I disliked, and then it turned into, okay, finally. There was a play on the baseline. Dyson pump fake, got a guy past him, drove, and he went up and it was just him in the rim. And the defender was on the other side of the rim. So he's driving baseline. Defender's on the other side of the rim. Defender made a business decision, just like I think a lot of people should do with Dyson. Dyson went up and like tried to like finger roll it, and he missed. And I was like, just bro, dunk the ball. And then like 2 minutes later, he came down and he got around the screen, and nobody came over to help. Dyson straight to the rim, and he dunked it. And he dunked it, and it still wasn't like you're 6'8", punch that thing. It was like a rim grazer. And so again, Dyson's aggressiveness is going to pay off for the Pelicans, and it's going to pay off for him. Once that confidence and that decisiveness and that aggressiveness, some of the things that we're seeing with Herb, when you talk about Herb letting the shot go and going to the rim and not looking for somebody to come save him, Dyson needs some of that as well, right? He talked about like wanting to model himself after Herb and how Herb is such a cerebral player and things like that. That is some of the things. Take that from Herb. Like, go and dunk the ball. You'll be fine, I promise. But Dyson's development is coming along really well. I'm very happy with the guy, so young, right? Got to remember that not only is he young in the NBA standards, but he's a young guy, a young man.
He's the youngest one on the team.
Right. And you can see his body, him growing into his shoulders are a little wider. His arms are a little more defined. And so you're seeing him grow into that body and grow into, the player he wants to be. As that confidence and decisiveness comes, Dyson is going to be a really good player. And, we talk about the Pelicans and their passing and turnovers and needing a point guard. I mean, there's one, he's on the floor. Like he's on a team, he's on a roster. And I think, I think the best case scenario for the Pelicans is that Dyson grows into, should that be our starting point guard? I think that is the best bit because he's so good defensively and he's such a savant with the ball and he thinks the game that I think that if he gets to a point where he's confident in getting those decisive moves and decisive measures down, he already has a go-to move. The spin move is inevitable, and people can't seem to stop it. He went to it 2 or 3 times and scored a good bit on it, excuse me. And so he has a go-to move. So I just think it's about his confidence, and you can see it, right? You see the tools coming together, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player for the Pels this season.
Yeah, you got to remember, Dyson been playing professional basketball for a long time, like as a kid over in Australia. And so his skill level is probably further along than a lot of players at 20 years old, just in all the different parts of the basketball game that he can do. But to your point, I don't think Dyson realized how athletic he actually is, because a lot of times he is above the rim and chooses to let. I don't know if that's the Australian way of playing. I don't know what, but whoever told Trey that, bro, you are not just a shooter. You have a hell of a jumper. You have a hell of a leaping ability. Dunk the ball every time. Needs to be the same person that tells Dyson, hey, bro, if you are anywhere near the goal, force somebody to make a decision. Herb goes in, like you said, with reckless intentions. You want to see that from Dyson as well. So the Pelicans have their next game on Saturday. It'll be the 3rd of the 4 preseason games. Bro, we're getting closer to that opening night versus Memphis. But what you got left for the people, Garrick?
As always, you never know what someone is going through, so give somebody a smile today. We are trucking to the home opener and to the regular season opener. I think the Pelicans have some work to do. They have some things to figure out, but you have 2 preseason games to kind of iron out some kinks before the curtain rises and the games start to matter. So as always, follow myself at Garrick_Rattler on Twitter. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO Basketball, no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social media. And most importantly, subscribe to the page, New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys in the next show.